Many of you have asked about our tea school, the Nannuoshan Tea School, how to become a tea student, what's that all about? Well, in this video I will share with you a private tea lesson with one of our tea students. Hi guys, this is Gabriele from Nannuoshan, where we share the pleasure of drinking and discovering genuine farm tea. You know that I'm sharing every week videos with all of you, but that's not the only way with whom I actually share my tea knowledge. Since few months there is also the possibility to subscribe to the Nannuoshan Tea School, becoming a Nannuoshan Tea student and undertake a series of tea classes, tea lessons, tea experience with me, and also, if you want, with other partners at Nannuoshan, both here in the Western world and also for those more advanced directly from China. So many of you have asked what that's all about. In the meantime, we have quite a good group of tea students, so we don't have a lot of free spots because unfortunately my time is not infinite and I'm pretty much reaching the limit, but there are a few spots free, so if you're still interested, go ahead, have a look at the different options. I guarantee you they are cheap. It's very hard to keep those prices actually because it requires quite a lot of preparation every tea class, but we do really our best. You have different options, from just going for a single class to have an experience, to buy a package, to become a tea student with the whole abo and the whole subscription and have a whole year of additional advantages to it. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Let me show how actually a normal tea class is usually. There is no usually because it depends really on the level of the student and what are your wishes. But today I'm going to have a tea class with Patrick and let's see how it looks like. So Patrick, last time we drank together Jensen Xiaozhong, so let's say the precious version of Lapsang Souchong, and you told me that you are actually not so much into black tea, isn't it?
Yeah, I think my experience with black tea before must have just been poor quality or just not brewed correctly or just maybe just an overall not a pleasant experience with black tea. But after our session last time, it really changed my mind and change my perspective on the black tea category.
And so we have to keep it on the right path. And this is, by the way, not something that affecting, let's say, only you. The thought that that black tea is not a particularly good tea. I don't know why. That's a common thinking among the high-level tea drinker. Maybe because black tea is what everyone drinks, and we think we can actually drink something better. But there are really good black tea out there, and so I suggest that today we remain actually in the black tea sphere, and we investigate one other tea that has similarities with Jensen Xiaozhong, but not necessarily in taste, in other aspects. So that's Qimen Hongcha, and in particular we are drinking Qimen Maofeng. So before we get started, I will give you some information about the tea, because differently than Jensen Xiaozhong, the region where Qimen is produced is much more accessible. So if you want to go to Tongmuguan as a foreigner, it's very tricky because actually you're not allowed to go there. There are some police controls, so you put yourself at risk and also the people that bring you there. Well, Qimen is open, so I've been there a few times. First of all, I will share with you the map. So if we search for Qimen, you see the map, right?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. So we search for Qimen. Okay, now it's very zoom in. We go a little bit back. You see where Qimen is. It is right there. So it is western and a little bit southern than Shanghai, and is right northern than Wuishan, which is actually about here at the border between here. Well, you see also from the picture that that's Wuishan. So it's a different province. It's in the southern of Anhui. Then you have Jiangxi here on the west and Zhejiang on the east, and then on the southern part there is Fujian, but it is about 300 to 400 kilometers southern, or actually northern than Uisan. So region-wise is not too far off, let's say.
So with the two regions, Qimen and Tangguguan being relatively close, there must be some influences from one to the other in terms of the black tea production.
I think at that time, not that much, because when black tea was invented, it was centuries ago. And at that time, to cover 300 to 400 to 500 kilometers was not that easy. So I think the development was quite independent, but actually Tongguan came first. That's pretty sure. Qimen came later on. So certainly somehow that information passed over to Anhui, but also was influenced by local production. And actually, we said last time that Zhengshan Xiaozhong is actually known in the West also as Lapsang Souchong, or at least the export version of it. And for Qimen Hongcha, we have exactly the same. Where Qimen Hongcha is known in English as Keemun, but Keemun is also only the export version. So you have even different designation for the grade of the tea in the Qimen Hongcha, the Chinese version that is meant for inland production and consumption, and the one meant for the export. Produced in the same area by completely different size of factories or producer and of quality of tea itself. And actually, before I show you some picture of my journeys there, let me give you also some more information about the tea. So our tea that we drink today is called Qimen Maofeng. Actually, if we would really use the full name, it would be Qimen Hong Maofeng, because the Qimen Hongcha is the name of the tea, so the red tea from Qimen, and Maofeng is only a characterization of the leaf shape, right? So Maofeng means something like downy tips.
Okay.
And is used to describe that particular shape actually of leaf. But there are also other, and it's one of the most precious actually usually, or that shape is kept for some of the most precious processing of Qimen Hongcha. There are also others, and I've done some time ago a video about Qimen Hongcha with Caroline, and in that video, we explain also different type of shapes. So I'm not going to repeat all these because you can find that content already online yourself. So if you go, for example, on the Qimen Maofeng website on our webpage, you will find the link to the video and you can have a look. In that video, we compared the tasting of Qimen Hongcha or Qimen Maofeng in the Yixing and in a Gaiwan. So it's the different thing than what we are doing today. Today, we actually want to compare it with the last tea you had with Zhengshan Xiaozhong.
Yeah, that's great. So with the Qimen province, no, what is it?
It's a county.
What is Qimen?
It's a county.
So their region is mostly more famously known for green teas.
Yes, you can say that. The Huangshan Maofeng is more famous than Qimen Hongcha, also in China. But Qimen Hongcha is also a fairly famous black tea, for sure. So they are both very famous. But I would say yes, the Huangshan Maofeng is more famous, and the province Anhui, the whole province, is more famous for green tea than for black tea. There are other very famous green tea that are produced there. Sorry?
Did they start kind of get their production with green tea and then switched into the black tea, or they kind
came first? Yes, and you have other famous tea in the north of Anhui. You have Luang Guapian comes from there. You have Taiping Hokui comes from there, both near the capital of Anhui, which is Hefei, in the fairly north of the province. So, and there are also a lot of secondary green tea production that are only known locally, but they have really their own cultivar and their own processing. So it's a very, very wide spectrum of green tea. Well, the spectrum of black tea is a bit more limited. And there is actually also Heicha in Anhui. So you have quite a big spectrum of teas, yeah. But let me show you some of the picture of the trip, so you can get more of a feeling of the different type of production and how things work there. So I'm going to share my screen now. So what you see here is a small village in Qimen County. What are these people doing here? They are actually waiting for the farmers, not for the farmers, wrong, for the pickers to come down from the hills. As you see, it was bad weather, but nonetheless, they pick the leaves also when there is bad weather, although it's not optimal. And here you see the picker that came down. So this lady in green is one of the picker. And what they do, the picker pick the leaves from common gardens. They are gardens that actually belong to the village. They are free, the picker are free to go up there, pick the leaves, bring them down, and they sell the leaves to middlemen. So you see here actually a middleman, or if you want a middle lady on the left, that start negotiating the price with the picker. And here again, on the right, middleman, and on the left, the picker. And this is, I think, a very good picture, and it makes me a little bit sorry actually thinking that even in this small, let's say, world, there is a very clear difference in the class of the two. The middlemen have more power, and you see that in the picture that the farmer that spend all morning under the rain picking the leaves, that has difficulties really in negotiating the price.
Wow, yeah.
You see also, this is kind of trying to complain maybe that they are offering a too low price, but maybe the leaves are wet and they find excuse why the price should be lower than that.
Yeah.
Also in this picture, you see, it was really pouring rain. It was fairly cold. Yeah. You see actually in this picture how cold it was. I am sitting here on charcoal. Inside this, there is a charcoal just in the back of my feet. And I remember very good, inside the house, there were 7 degrees centigrade. They don't have heating in Fuji, and in winter, and even here it was early spring, can get really, really cold. Okay, so what you see here, the middleman then in the evening bring the leaves to some factories. Yeah, and this is like a medium-sized factory, nothing to do with Keemun or export tea. This is still for inland consumption, but are not single farmer doing the processing. It is small factories. In the small factories, nonetheless, they have employees that really work every single batch in a wok, like you see in this picture. And under the wok, they have these gluing charcoal. And this is used to basically dry a little bit the leaves, and in particular shaping the leaves by hand. This is another factory where we brought the tea that we purchased during the day from the pickers, and it is a larger factory. So in this factory, they were no more using a wok to process the leaves. They were doing it more automatically. And here you see they are just bed with leaves that are there for withering.
So the tea leaves, you brought your own tea leaves to this factory for them to process?
The middlemen bring the leaves that they have bought during the day from the pickers, and they sell at a higher price here. So now I think we can start drinking the tea. I suggest we just wait 3 grams of leaves.
So those pictures we were just seeing was basically the first steps of Qimen Maofeng?
Yeah, and there are also single farmers that produce the tea. So this Qimen Maofeng doesn't come from a factory; it comes from a single farmer. that buy also tea from the same picker, but then do all the processing at home himself. And I will show you later some picture of that processing, because there is some peculiarity to it. So you see how tightly rolled those leaves are.
Yeah, very, very slender.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So we don't need a lot of leaves because we don't have to do thousands of steeping. We do just a few. And while we speak, I see if I can find some of those pictures that I was mentioning. You see the screen, right?
Yeah, basket.
Right, and this is actually after the tea has been processed in the wok. So usually after it has been processed in the wok, there is a final drying step that is done in the oven. But traditionally, of course, centuries ago, they were not using ovens. They were actually drying it on charcoal. And I personally like the drying on the charcoal better. And you see here how it works, that this lady put a small portion of leaves actually on a basket, and inside that basket there is actually charcoal, and it takes about 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes to dry to the level that it can be stored.
It's amazing how much of the process is done by hand and how small scale each step can be.
You see, yeah, also how what a difference there is between doing it at home or doing it in a factory, a small scale factory, a larger factory, and we're not even looking at those huge factories that are actually meant for export, and they have actually their own gardens and they pick the leaf just by machine. So is really, they are really worlds apart. Like in this case, the farmer processed about 200-gram batches for drying on charcoal for 30 to 45 minutes. So until she goes through the amount of leaves that we need, she spends the whole day just to dry the leaves. And so the processing of black tea is somewhat clear to you. I think you know already how it is done, right?
Yeah, just basically that it's once it's picked, it's left to oxidize until the leaves are completely oxidized before it goes on to further processing.
Yeah, kind of. So wait, maybe I share with you something else so that we can have a look also at that quickly. Do you see the screen?
Yeah.
So just very briefly to go the different step of black and black tea, which of course we say it's called red tea in China. So you have the wittering, that's the first part. You have seen in the picture before when they were wittering the tea in the factory. After that, as you said, well, there is the oxidation. And you see here a picture before and after the oxidation, how the leaves change from green to actually red, copper, brown color.
Yeah.
And here you see some oxidation rooms. So you have different types of. You see on the right, there is an oxidation room in Yunnan. So a very big greenhouse, actually. And on the left side, you see a very tiny, is actually just a closet that work with the same principle of greenhouse principle. And inside there, they would put just the leaves for up to almost 10 hours to oxidize. And the greenhouse effect is used to keep the temperature high and the moisture high inside. Then, of course, we have killed the green, so the leaves are heated up and they are shaped. Shaping is done either in the wok, so to reach these tiny, slender Maofeng shape, you have to do it by hand. Otherwise, there are also machines that are used for the process. And then there is a final step for drying to really reduce the moisture content even further. And this can be done either at the free air. So you see here an example where they simply distribute the black tea on a mat outside, or it can be done in the oven, or sometimes even in the wok, or as we have seen before, using these charcoal baskets, right? Okay, so now that we've seen the processing and a little bit the history about Qimen, I think is now the time to start drinking. Let's bring the water to 90 degrees. Patrick is quite an advanced tea student. He hasn't been drinking tea for very long, but since he started, he really deep dived into it, and he already reached a fairly good level of knowledge. And so we don't go for basic tea classes, but we really already look at differences between, in this case, different type of black tea. We do blind tasting, but sometimes when there is the need and maybe there are some lack of basic knowledge, we just jump into it and fill that gap. So as for you, if you would like to join, it's really up to you. It depends which type of tea do you like, what would you like to deepen, and maybe if you also enjoy just watching tea classes from others, just let me know, and I will try to ask other tea students if they would like to share their tea classes with you. Do you have your voice
this
container?
leaf shape is hand, like rolled by hand in the wok.
Yeah.
What would be like a leaf shape from Keemun that would be like done with the machine, the rolling machine?
So in the wok, you can also achieve other shapes. It's not the only shape. It depends how you roll the leaves. So for these, for example, the leaves are often taken between the hands and really done with this movement. There are also there is a xiangluo, is called, which means fragrance spiral. Is another way, is another shape common for Qimen Honcha. In that case, the movement is different in the wok and create small spiral beads also in the wok. For the machine, you can also create a Maofeng shape. There are machines that have that are shaped like this, like little waves, and you know which one, and they are heated underneath, and they move forth and back, and the leaves spring up and down, and by doing that, they are rolled in the shape of a Maofeng, basically, but not as tightly as these here that are almost like filaments.
Yeah.
Because for doing that, you really have to press the leaves between your hands. And if this pressing would be done by machine, it would risk to really squeeze too much the leaves and break them. So to really achieve this tight, slender shape, the only way is to do it by machine. But you can achieve all shapes with both machine and hand. It's just a different quality.
Yeah.
So we are going to steep, we say, actually we have the same guy one. We have 3 grams of leaves. We do a very brief wash. So we warm up the guy one and we warm up our teaware. And then since the leaves are so tight, we will do the first steeping longer than the second and the following, because, or at least than the second, because it needs some time to unfurl those slender leaves. Okay, you tell me when you are ready. I have here a watch in front of me, so that I would say we do a fairly long, maybe 1 minute and 15 seconds, something like that.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay, so we do everything. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So we have here, we say 3 grams, we pour about 100 milliliters of water, and we wait another minute, and then we drink it. Yeah, I haven't drank this for a while, and these charcoal processing really give the leaves a very peculiar taste. It's not smoky to the level like the smoky Jensen Shaozhong, but you will see it brings a certain level of depth, while if you dry it in the oven, you get a much cleaner taste, also a little bit simpler if you want, that somehow nowadays in China is more appreciated. I personally actually prefer the traditional way with the charcoal. We have just 15 seconds to go. We forgot actually smelling the dry leaves while speaking, but we will catch up with the wet. Okay, let's go. Good. So, first of all, let's smell the lid of the Gaiwan. What can you tell me about that?
Very kind of like a light kind of flat floral kind of fragrance.
Mm. And the color of the brew? I don't know if you remember the color of Jensen Shaozhong. Was some time ago.
It was it's so this is still brewing like lighter than what like black tea I've had in the past, where it's like really dark red almost. This is like a lighter color. It's similar to the Gen Shen Zhaozhang.
Mm-hmm. So that was point. Yeah, it is lighter, and Qimen Maofeng is known for having a lighter color than other black tea. So more yellow than red, if you want.
But if I remember, this seems a little darker than the Genshen Zhaozhang. Maybe.
Yeah, could be, maybe. Yeah.
They're close though. They're similar.
Yeah. Is maybe is brighter compared to for example Dianhong from Yunnan that has a more Bordeaux dark red color. But it's true that also the Jensen Shaozhong was, now that you say, more in the yellow direction. So I would say it's fairly aromatic.
Last time we were talking a little bit about like the malty flavor of black tea, and I think this has a little bit more of that feeling to me than.
Yes, that's yes. I would describe this as malty, and malty. Sometimes it's even difficult to describe the taste, maltiness. It is a kind of sweet taste for sure. So malt is sweet, and it has maybe it's a nutty sweet taste, I would say, that have some components that go also in the direction of caramel or toast. Yeah, sometimes it's even associated with coffee, although I don't think this reminds at all coffee, but it has this a little bit of this caramel nutty sweetness to it. Shall we have a look at our tasting note and think now about really the basic taste to see where we are with this tea. So
Yeah.
we say we have sweetness, sourness, saltiness, and bitterness and umami. So do you consider this a sweet tea?
Yeah, I think it's got definitely some sweet notes to it. Yeah, I would say.
Out of 3-star, 1 or 2?
I would say maybe 1.5, between 1 and 2. But
Okay, let's give 1, and then we see with the next steepings, because usually sweetness is more pleasant in the first steeping and then again at the very end, because you have some very light sugar compounds that dissolve very quickly in water, much faster than bitter compounds. So you have them at the very beginning. Then you have an in-between phase where you have also some bitterness and strength that comes through. And at the very end, you have the amides that are also sweet, that require more time to dissolve and then bring a different type of sweetness in the latest steepings. So let's keep 1, and then we see if how the next steeping are going. Then we say, is it sour for you?
no, not at all.
Yeah,
So.
same here, not sour. Salty?
Maybe a little kind of something there.
But definitely much less than sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
Like if
definitely.
you give 1 star to sweetness, you cannot give 1 star to saltiness here.
No.
So we leave
No.
that. We leave that for a second. Is it bitter?
Tiny bit. I get like a little bit of.
So here I make just a dot, and then we see how it evolves, if we get bitterness coming out in the next steeping. And just to conclude, any umami in there?
Not really. Maybe just like in the sense of like a toasted bread kind of.
Yeah, and
flavor.
I write a dot, I write toasted bread, because it is a good association. And then we see when we deepen into future steeping. I have also to say that I think we really matched the right steeping time. It is very balanced, it's not over steep, it's not too light, it's not always like that, but we were lucky with that. All right, so now smell the lid. It smells very different than Genshan Shaozhong to me. And you have more Genshan Shaozhong at home, right?
Yeah.
So forget about the smoky one, take the other one, and then maybe in the next day do a parallel comparison between the two.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that'd be great. It definitely has like it smells like a bouquet of like flowers a little bit.
Yes,
Just a slight kind of.
and in particular, not so much the floweriness of it, but the intensity. You know, when you put your nose in a bouquet of flower that is almost saturating your nostrils.
Yeah.
So it has this, I would call it a high pitch aroma.
Yeah.
That the Genshan Shaozhong didn't have. The Genshan Shaozhong was smoother, and you had almost to search for the aroma. And here is the aroma that comes to you.
Yeah. Big difference there.
Okay, so let's do a further steeping. I will bring it to 90 degrees, and then we deepen it further. Let's say they have similarities, the two teas. Yeah, I mean, they are not too far off. They have a similar processing, somewhat. But certainly, there is much more difference if we would taste a Dianhong from Yunnan and one of these two. But nonetheless, by tasting first the Jianshan Shaozhong, now the Qimen, and then maybe in the next day the two together, you should acquire the capability actually of distinguishing really between the two blind. Yeah, it takes some time, but it will do. And I think by the end we have written all our table here, tasting note. We will have also a better overview. So for example, last time we really excluded completely sourness, bitterness, and umami. Yeah, we didn't think about that for both the smoked and unsmoked.
Yeah,
and we say there is sweetness and a little bit of saltiness. That's it. While here we see maybe more complexity, even in the basic stage. So we say, yeah, there is a bit of sweetness, sourness not, but saltiness is there. Maybe a bit of bitterness, maybe a bit of umami. There is a lot in it.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, are you ready with your 90 degrees water?
Yep, I'm at 90.
Yeah, so 4, 3, 2, 1, go. This one we do 1 minute, so I started at 15 seconds. I hope I remember that. So we do it a bit shorter than the other one, as the leaves are unfurled. And you will see also a difference in the size of the leaves. If you remember, the Jianshan Shaozhong had fairly large leaves, actually.
Yeah, quite large. Almost reminded me of a Yensha kind of size of leaf.
And in this case, we will see soon, you can have a look inside, but you can see that they are smaller. And actually, they are still fairly long, but even when they unfurl, they are still relatively slender. Even the open leaf is slender, maybe just because of the difference in the cultivar. So just 5 seconds to go. So let's go. And here you see also the benefit of these tasting notes that really guide you through the tasting in the same fashion between different sessions. And when you have a comparison, even if you don't remember exactly, you can say, oh, look, last time I didn't notice any sourness, any bitterness, any umami, and here I have some doubts. So it helps you recalling what your impression was. The color seems very similar. A very bright orange yellow. And now let's briefly think again about the 5 basics compound, the 5 basic states before going to through the detail. So sweetness, before we said you were unsure between 1 and 2 star, how many you would give now? We said 1 or 2 stars out of 3.
It's still similar to me. Maybe 1.5. Maybe a little sweeter this time.
Maybe a little bit. What do you say?
Yeah, maybe a little sweeter on this one.
Okay. Then you still feel some saltiness in it.
I don't think so. I don't pick that up on this steeping.
So let's not put any saltiness and no sourness. Bitterness.
No, I think it's less, has just a slight less. It's like more of the malty kind of flavor than bitter on this round.
It's getting more body.
Yeah.
And it's less bright in taste than the first one. Okay, now I would jump on our tasting notes to the, we will look later about intensity and texture when we have another steep, so we have a more complete picture about it. let's now look at the taste profile. So we have, very briefly, we go through, do you find this tea vegetal?
I think no, it's not vegetal at all. I have to go back up to the sweetness after I've been sipping on it a little bit. It's definitely two.
It's two. Okay,
sweetness.
let's give two. Let's give two. Okay.
No, vegetal, not at all. I don't think.
Not vegetal at all. Is it floral or fruity?
Definitely floral.
Yeah.
Maybe like a 1 though, because it's not like super intense, but it definitely has some floral characteristics.
So more floral than fruity.
I think so, yeah.
Any nutty, milky taste? Or creamy somehow?
It does have a kind of a creamy feel a little bit, and like a kind of like an almond milk kind of consistency a little bit, like not super thick, but yeah.
Just a tiny bit maybe. We wait, because for me the florality is much more clear. So if we give 1 star to florality, giving also 1 to nuttiness may be too much. But we can review also later on. Is it spicy?
I don't think so.
No, I mean neither. So it's not spicy. Any taste of fire or animal?
Maybe just like a very small. I don't know. It's hard to pick that one out for me. It just doesn't jump out quite.
I can tell you, it would be easier if we would be drinking also in parallel a Qimen Maofeng that was not dried with charcoal. It tastes much more maybe watery in a way. Yeah.
Okay.
So this has, maybe because I have the comparison, but it has some of that charcoal note, I would say. Yeah, it's not smoked, but it gives a tiny bit more texture and intensity that reminds me to some smoke, although it's not smoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe let's put 1 star here. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, we'll do 1 star. I like that.
And is it marine?
No.
Soil taste?
No, I don't think so.
Neither. No soil. And then we have, well, for the aftertaste, we can think a little bit about later. So we have, so far, is a fairly sweet tea with a tiny bit of bitterness and a tiny bit of umami. And from a taste profile, it is floral, and it has this additional layer of complexity, probably coming from the charcoal drying.
Interesting.
Yeah, to give him more of a frame. We can do another steeping in between.
Would you say maybe the charcoal characteristic is kind of that like toast kind of flavor?
Yeah.
A little bit?
Yeah. When you say that this is a toasted bread, that's what I associate with that charcoal taste. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want the next to fire animal, we can write toasty. Or slightly roasted. Of course, it doesn't have nothing to do with the roasting of uyencha, that is actually dried on charcoal at higher temperature and for much, much longer, hours and hours. Here we're speaking about just 30 minutes. So it's fairly different. Much less intense than a yench as well. So now we make I'll write it down. We have 90 degrees C, 3 grams, 100 milliliters. We did 75 seconds, then 60 seconds, and now we do another 75. So you don't always want to be that precise in recording everything. Here, the purpose today is to do really a comparison with another tea. So, for example, if we would go for a blind tasting that we will do also in the future, or just a tasting just to enjoy the tea, let's say, you would get rid of this systematic approach and just concentrate on the feeling. But since you want to work on these teas and the Genshan Shaozhuang also later on, it's good to have some reference so that you can do things the same way, and you remove a variable, let's say, from the play. Okay, ready?
I would say using these notes has been very helpful for me. It kind of gives me like something to focus on as I'm tasting it, to give me some direction. So I'm not just kind of like sipping it and I don't really know what I'm searching for. This kind of gives me like a guide to like pick out specific things and then rate them, the intensity of them. It kind of gives me some structure. I've liked using these notes.
And you can concentrate on different aspects while you go through the steepings. And you will see that you have used this now just a few times, but when you will be continue using it, it will come automatically. You know, you drink a tea and instantly you will think at the 5 basic tastes, at intensity, at texture, at the aroma, at the different tasting notes. Is it vegetal? Instantly you think automatically vegetal, floral, fruity, nutty, all in your mind. It just requires some exercise, basically. So 3, 2, 1, go. We do 75, so I started at 35, 45. I have to stop at 50. Okay, so now in the next steeping, of course, if we spot some specific tasting notes, we will write that down, but we will focus later on intensity and texture. So we want to see where we are there. You know that on the tasting notes, we have a scale for it that we will look at. And you can really review that while it continues the steeping, and make up your mind. And then when you drink it, you just search for a confirmation. So let me look at the watch. We have another 15 seconds. So 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Consistent color.
Yeah.
And consistent aroma, actually. Now, although now you can tell that some of the taste has gone into the liquor, because when you put your nose in the Gaiwan, it's no more that fresh bouquet. It's still there, but fainter.
How would you describe the smell of these wet leaves now?
Okay, I have to say that for me, the aroma, it didn't change. It just became lighter. It is still floral. Still, yeah. Almost like a parfum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very aromatic. By the way, when we mentioned before Qimen and Huangshan Maofeng, those two teas are actually done exactly with the same leaves. So these farmers that came down from the mountain, the pickers, and sold their leaves, the middlemen could use them to make green tea or to make black tea. And interestingly enough, this level of floral notes come out only through the oxidation. You won't be able to smell this extreme intense bouquet out of a Qimen Maofeng done with exactly the same leaves.
Wow.
Although actually, of course, it comes from there, but the transformation that happens through processing can be really drastic. So let's see now about intensity. We have this scale that goes from light to heavy.
Well, I remember our last session, I thought the Zhenshen Zhaozhang was balanced, and this I would say has more intensity than that. So maybe like next level up is substantial, maybe.
Yeah. Substantial, which would give 4-star out of 5 in this case. Yes, it is definitely more present than the Zhenshan Shaozhong. This comes maybe also from the charcoal drying, but we have to remember that in the Zhenshan Shaozhong, the smokiness given by the smoking on pine trees didn't bring that additional strength. The strength of the smoked and unsmoked was fairly similar.
Yeah.
Well, here we have this additional level of intensity. Yeah, so I would agree with that. And if we now look at the texture, which is more the tactile feeling in your mouth, like you would almost touch the liquor. And if we look at our scale, that goes from thin, watery, clean, down to starchy, powdery, fiery, or even rough.
If I'm looking at the scale,
I picked mine. Let's see, what do you pick?
so if I'm looking at the scale, I don't think it's quite up to the crisp level. So it's going to be below that maybe. And maybe round, I would say, just because it kind of has those, it had a little slight bitterness. It had a little bit of slight kind of toast flavor, a little bit of sweetness. So it has floral elements. It has so much there. I think just all those components for me make it feel like it has like more of a texture.
Although, yeah, that's I know that is difficult, but when you look at texture, you shouldn't look at taste.
Okay.
That's difficult, but when you look at texture, you should feel on your palate, on your tongue, if it runs smoothly, if you feel any roughness to it, like sandpaper, if you want. Yeah, it's really a tactile feeling. As I know it is difficult, but it shouldn't be mixed up with the receptors basically of the taste.
Okay.
What I do, I usually pass a good sip of tea through my mouth, and I concentrate when it flows over my palate and over my tongue. Do I feel it very, very smooth, even watery? Like think about the texture of water and milk. How water is more watery than milk. Or think about if you take milk and you dissolve, you melt a big chunk of butter in milk. How that became even denser, if you want, right? That's all consistency, texture.
Okay, so this is very smooth and velvety, I would say, on the scale. If I'm just like stripping out the taste and separating those, so.
So you would say basically smooth, velvety, so a relatively light texture, actually, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would give us 2 stars out of 5 with both I'm checking smooth and velvety actually. And so now we have a good overview. Now we have a tea that has quite some strength in terms of intensity, but still with a very smooth texture. Now, in the case of Genshan Shaozhong, we had both a light intensity and a smooth texture at the same time. So now, if we are still going into that comparison, here we have a tea that, compared to Genshan Shaozhong, it is also more or less as sweet as Genshan Shaozhong. It doesn't have any saltiness to it, or at least less than Genshan Shaozhong, to which we gave 1 star out of 3 for saltiness. It is more intense, maybe because of this toasty bread taste that you have pointed out, but the texture is very similar. It's still very smooth, very round in the mouth.
Yeah,
So
I
I
agree.
think, and a very crucial difference is that this tea is clearly floral.
Yes.
And Genshan Shaozhong was not floral at all. So maybe that's day one difference to keep in mind to spot it in the future. Maybe. But Patrick, I have to say that this type of florality you really have only in top quality Qimen. So even for Chinese inland consumption, if you take a later harvest in the spring, you might change your mind about the smoothness. It might become more substantial in your mouth. And at the same time, you lose some of those floral notes.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and here the advantage of having a very early harvest. This tea was harvested on the 9th of April, and we are not in the very south of China. So we are in the north, we're in the south of Anhui, so even northern than Fujian. So it is a fairly early harvest, we could say. And even the fact that we have processed it with charcoal, it still keep a clearly floral taste. If we would have done it in the oven, it would be even more floral than that.
Oh, wow.
But would be more watery. It wouldn't have that toasty compound to it. Let's put it this way. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
makes sense.
Yeah, it's amazing how much nuance be in just the variations of processing. Even the same leaves and the same everything. Just if you do it in the charcoal versus an oven, you get so much difference.
Yes, it's massive. There was a year where we actually featured both. I asked the farmer to process one batch of the same leaves in the oven and one batch with charcoal. Then the year that we sourced this one, I just went for the charcoal because I like it better. So now I took just one leaf, and you see how small it is with respect to the Genshan Shaozhong.
Yeah. Yeah, very small.
Yeah, so we will have to think now what to do next in the next video. Now we've done 2 tasting or video in the next tea class. Now we have done 2 tasting of 2 black tea, so I think it's good to move to something else. We have sent you some blind samples, so I think now is the time to taste something blind. And I will check, I don't have them in front of me right now, which sample we sent over, and then I will give you the number of the sample, and next time we go through a blind tasting.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be fun.
Cool. All right, yeah. Any question about Qimen or anything else?
So the size of the leaves has been quite a difference from the Genshin Zhaozhang. So is there like a way, if you're looking at like say dry leaves, is there a way to kind of tell the category of the tea based on the size, or is it just they're just so many different options that you can't really? out?
No, you can. So, I mean, maybe you cannot really spot which tea exactly it is just by looking at the leaves, but you can make some conclusions based on the aspect. So, for example, first of all, you can tell by the aspect that it is a black tea. So you see that the leaves are completely oxidized, they're very homogeneous in color,
Yeah.
so you already identify the category. Once you spot that is a black tea, you can already say that it is a small leaf variety. So it's not a variety from Yunnan, it's not a classic bud only Dianhong, because there are no buds in here.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, by really looking at the leaves before steeping, the fact that the leaves were so tightly rolled, you could already, and of course they are whole, you can just say they were picked by hand and they were even processed and shaped by hand. And there are not so many tea that actually are shaped as a black tea in that shape. So if you remember, the Jensen Shaozhong had much larger leaves.
Yeah, yeah.
So you could tell this is not a Jensen Shaozhong, because Jensen Shaozhong never comes with those tightly rolled leaves. So you could find the direction, but yeah, it's a bit difficult, of course, to just by looking at the leaves say this is exactly that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's and it's fairly generous. Like we could certainly continue steeping. Maybe the next one I would do 2 minutes, and that would be already the fourth one. We could try a fifth one and doing a very long steep just to see what comes out of it. And for having just 3 grams of leaves would be a good yield, let's say, for the tea, for sure.
Yeah.
This is something you can try if you want to do another steep, then about 2 minutes, and then the last one that you do, you leave it for much longer, or you can even leave for 10 minutes or so, and then see in that last cup if you have some return of sweetness that would be coming from the amit that I mentioned before. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, Patrick. Thanks a lot for for this tea class and also for allowing me to sharing these on YouTube. Hopefully, then everyone actually also on the YouTube channel will have a better idea how these tea classes are. I say, Patrick, you are more already experienced in the sense that you haven't been drinking tea for very, very long at this level, but you made a deep dive, right? You really are into it. So we seldom go into the very general aspect of tea, but we already do, like a comparison between Jensen Shaozhong and Qimen. And it depends really on the type of tea students and which are the needs. Yeah. So you expressed also the wish of doing some blind tasting, and that's why we are going through that. It seems actually blind tea tasting, people like them a lot. I'm not so sure if they like them when other people are blind tasting, because they like to have fun by watching people struggling to guess the tea, or if it is also also nice to be actively doing that. Yeah.
It's like a nice opportunity to kind of like test what you've been learning along the way to see. It's like validation that you're kind of making progress, I would say.
And it's always easy to know what you are drinking when you know what you're drinking and say, oh, this tea tastes like this and that, because you know actually what you are drinking. But there is no better way to really blind tasting to confirm actually that you're not biased by the knowledge actually of what you're drinking.
Yeah, definitely.
So I hope you have enjoyed this stolen tea class. Of course, you didn't participate actively. It was Patrick asking me the question and interacted with me and exchanging with me information. But nonetheless, I hope it was beneficial also to know really the difference between these two famous tea, close to each other, but nonetheless quite different in taste. And if you have any question about Qimen Maofeng or any other tea, just let me know in the comments below. And as I mentioned to Patrick, there is another video about Qimen Maofeng. I didn't check actually which type of taste profile we came up with a year ago, but it was exactly the same batch. So if you're curious, go ahead. I will put a link in the description below, and you can also check what Caroline and I had to say on the topic a year ago. Thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe our channel, or even to subscribe our tea school if you're interested to, and go ahead, give us a thumbs up, and yeah, I will see you the next time. Bye guys.